All right, folks, we have yet another breaking news bombshell related to Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files debacle of the Trump administration. That Donald Trump's political headache is likely about to become a full blown political migraine. A forensic analysis of the Epstein prison video released by the Trump administration has revealed that footage was, quote, likely modified. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Yep, Wired has just dropped this bombshell tech analysis and reporting. We'll get to that in a second, but according to Fact Post, the headline is effectively this. New analysis of the Epstein prison video metadata shows the video released by the DOJ was, quote, likely modified. Quote, the file appears to have been assembled from at least 2 source clips, saved multiple times, exported, and then re-uploaded to the DOJ's website, where it was presented as raw footage. Ouch. And again, this is the report from Wired. Metadata shows the FBI's raw Jeffrey Epstein video was likely modified. There is no evidence that the footage was deceptively manipulated, according to this report, but ambiguities around how the video was processed may further fuel conspiracy theories about Jeffrey Epstein's death. You will also note that footage was missing 1 minute. 1 minute of footage was missing from the video released. And Pam Bondi, before we get into the reporting from Wired and the reaction to it, I want to remind you of what Pam Bondi had to say about that missing 1 minute, which had already caused people to speculate that the footage had been doctored or modified, what her response was. And I'll also remind you that this came after Donald Trump had a public meltdown at that cabinet meeting that people were still asking about his former good friend, Jeffrey Epstein.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every.
So a lot of people were unsatisfied by that. It seemed just intuitively unlikely. That's very coincidental, but hey, maybe it's true. I don't work for the Bureau of Prisons. I think it's perfectly possible, and we should be reluctant to go down the conspiracy theory route. But also, this is the Trump administration. They're the most dishonest administration in American history, as well as the most corrupt. So I understand people's skepticism when they hear an explanation like that. But let's get into the reporting from Wired. Metadata shows the FBI's raw Jeffrey Epstein prison video was likely modified. There's no evidence that the footage was deceptively manipulated, but ambiguities around how the video was processed may further fuel conspiracy theories about Epstein's death. The United States Department of Justice this week released nearly 11 hours of what it described as full raw surveillance footage from a camera positioned near Epstein's prison cell the night before he was found dead. The release was intended to address conspiracy theories about Epstein's apparent suicide in federal custody, but instead of putting those suspicions to rest, it may fuel them further. Metadata embedded in the video and analyzed by Wired and independent video forensics experts shows that rather than being a direct export from the prison surveillance system, the footage was modified, likely using professional editing tool Adobe Premiere Pro. The file appears to have been assembled from at least 2 source clips, saved multiple times, exported, and then uploaded to the DOJ's website, where it was presented as raw footage. Experts caution that it's unclear exactly what was changed and that the metadata does not prove deceptive manipulation. The video may have been simply processed for public release using available software with no modifications beyond stitching together 2 clips. Okay, so again, it's making room for this, that there may not be a nefarious explanation here. But the absence of a clear explanation for the processing of the file using professional editing software complicates the Justice Department's narrative. In a case already clouded by suspicion, the ambiguity surrounding how the file was processed is likely to provide fresh fodder for conspiracy theories. Any aspect of the official story that isn't fully explained will be co-opted by conspiracy theorists, says Mike Rothschild, an author who writes about conspiracy theories and extremists. Quote, so whatever your flavor of Epstein conspiracy theory is, the video will help bolster it. For months leading up to the joint memo by the DOJ and FBI that was published Monday, Attorney General Pam Bondi had promised the release of records related to Epstein, raising expectations that new, potentially incriminating details might surface about the disgraced financier's death and his ties to powerful individuals. However, rather than revealing new information, the memo largely confirmed conclusions reached years earlier, that Epstein was found in a Manhattan prison cell on August 10, 2019, and died by suicide while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. Again, perfectly plausible explanation, and that's been the official conclusion for years, right? Given the charges that this man faced, right? We have seen and heard of people taking their own lives rather than face justice under like far less salacious and disturbing charges, right? So it's a perfectly plausible explanation. The problem is the right and MAGA ran with a more sinister conspiracy theory, and now the Trump administration is being hoisted by its own petard. So it's fair game to talk about as far as I'm concerned. To support its conclusion, the FBI reviewed surveillance footage overlooking the common area of the Special Housing Unit at the Metropolitan Correction Center, MCC, where Epstein was held. The FBI enhanced the footage by adjusting contrast, color, and sharpness, and released both the enhanced and what it described as the raw version. Both versions of the video appear to have been processed using Premiere, and much of it includes the same metadata. According to the FBI, anyone entering the area containing Epstein's cell during the relevant time frame would have been visible on that camera. And then it releases, it's got a screenshot of the metadata. Working with two independent video forensics experts, Wire examined the 21 gigabyte files released by the DOJ. Using a metadata tool, reporters analyzed both exchangeable image file format and extensible metadata platform data to identify signs of post-processing. The raw file shows clear signs of having been processed using an Adobe product, most likely Premiere, based on metadata that specifically references files extensions used by the video editing software. According to experts, Adobe software, including Premiere and Photoshop, leaves traces in exported files, often embedding metadata that logs which assets were used and which actions were taken during the editing. In this case, the metadata indicates the file was saved at least 4 times over a 23-minute span on May 23, 2025, by a Windows user account called MJCole1. The metadata does not show whether the footage was modified before each time it was saved. The embedded data suggests the video is not a continuous, unaltered export from a surveillance system, but a composite assembled from at least 2 separate MP4 files. Okay? Haney Fareed, a professor at UC Berkeley whose research focuses on digital forensics and misinformation, reviewed the data at Wired's request. Fareed is a recognized expert in the analysis of digital images and the detection of manipulated media, including deepfakes. He has testified in numerous court cases involving digital evidence. Fareed says the metadata raises immediate concerns about chain of custody, the documented handling of digital evidence from collection to presentation in a courtroom. Just like physical evidence, he explains, digital evidence must be handled in a way that preserves its integrity. Metadata, while not always precise, can provide important clues about whether that integrity has been compromised. Quote, if a lawyer brought me this file and asked if it was suitable for court, I'd say no. Go back to the source, do it right, Fareed says. Do a direct export from the original system, no monkey business. Fareed points to another anomaly. The video's aspect ratio shifts noticeably at several points. Quote, why am I suddenly seeing a different aspect ratio? He asks. He cautions that while metadata clearly shows the video was modified, the changes could be benign. For example, converting footage from a proprietary surveillance format to a standard MP4. While there may be uncontroversial explanations for metadata artifacts, such as stitching together multiple days of footage during compilation or routine export of surveillance footage to an MP4 format, the FBI did not respond to specific questions about the file's processing, instead referring Wired to the DOJ. The DOJ, in turn, referred inquiries back to the FBI and the Bureau of Prisons. The Bureau of Prisons did not respond to a request for comment. So, folks, this is not good for the Trump administration at all, seeking to put this to bed. It's already trending on Twitter. People are reacting in real time. Democratic Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii says, I'm probably among the least conspiracy-minded people you would ever meet, but it's getting pretty nearly impossible to explain. David Hogg, former DNC vice chair, responded to this. Wow, next we'll learn that the client list that the sitting attorney general said was literally on her desk, did in fact exist. I'm waiting to see what MAGA's backlash is to this. Colin Rugg responded with it, but he has not editorialized. He's a right-wing account. He says they could have simply been splicing the two clips together, saving them. However, if that's the case, you'd have to be careful labeling it raw. Also, this is one of the most sensitive cases in the last year where tons of conspiracy theories are already being floated around. They should have been much more careful. If we don't get transparency over Epstein from this administration, we will never get it. So again, this is just breaking news, so we'll see how people respond to it. But I expect that this will only exacerbate the MAGA rebellion that Donald Trump is experiencing and could lead to potential political consequences before and after the 2026 midterms. It might even lead to certain people in the Trump administration being fired, perhaps like Attorney General Pam Bondi. We will definitely track MAGA's backlash, but I wanted to bring you those news. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.